Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at game number 1 of the 2024 World Chess Championship. Now, it's been an interesting road getting to this point. You have the current defending champion, Liren, who ever since he beat Jan Nepomniachtchi early in 2023 has mightily struggled over the last 18 plus months. He has fallen from being in the top 10 pretty consistently down to number 22 in the world with a rating of 27.28. And meanwhile, he is facing the Indian junior, one of the rising talents in the game, Gukesh, who is all the way up to number 5 in the world, knocking on the door of potentially becoming 2,800, but also on the verge of becoming one of the youngest world champions in history at the age of 18. So let's jump right into the action. Gukesh on a big heater in recent times, Ding a falling star, as you could say, but there is a great saying, which is form is temporary and class is permanent. But will the current world champion be able to show his form after struggling for the last year and a half? Well, let's find out. So game number 1 of the match, Gukesh has the white pieces, and very important to stress that with Gukesh having the white pieces, this signifies a very important moment, because I felt that if Ding were to get white in game number 1, it would not have much of a shift in terms of the pendulum. If it were a draw, I still think Gukesh would remain the favorite, but it wouldn't change much. If Ding were to win, obviously it'd be a big favorite, but it's the one matchup where if Ding were white, I don't think an even result would have a big effect. Now, with Gukesh having white in game 1, if Gukesh is a draw, I think it's a big advantage for Ding, because then Ding will play with white in game 2. He'll build some confidence. And of course, if Gukesh can win in game 1, he'll be the odds-on favorite. Obviously, if Ding is somehow able to miraculously win, that would be a big boost for him. But it's the one matchup with Ding having the black pieces where I think that a draw does have an effect versus the other way around. All right, so Gukesh with white, and the game starts with the move e4, and now we get the move e6 being played by Ding. Now, this is the first big shock. Ding chooses to play the classic French defense here with the black piece. This is an opening that he played at the very end of the last World Championship match against Jan Nepomniachtchi, but traditionally, Ding has been a player who's played either e5 on move 1 or the Caro Kann with c6. So we get e6. d4, d5 is played, and Gukesh plays knight c3 in a world championship match with many months to prepare. It's not too surprising to see this. Now, another point I would like to make is that the French defense has had a big renaissance over the last year. Many strong players have actually started playing. You have players like Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, Alireza Firouzja, Levon Aronian, amongst many others who have started to play. So the French is seeing a bit of a resurgence, and it is great to see. On top of that, one of the seconds for Ding Liren is Grandmaster Richard Rapport from Hungary, who is a longtime proponent of the French defense as well. So we got the French with knight c3, knight f6, e5, knight fd7, and now we got the move f4. Now, this is the classic Steinitz variation within the French. We get c5 from Ding Liren, and now the first surprise with the move knight c to e2. Normally, white plays move knight f3, and black has many options here. You can play this line with a6. You can go knight c6 amongst other things. I do want to show one line so we don't have to go back later, which is that if black were to play this move queen b6, one of the lines that white can play here, sorry, knight c6, bishop e3, I should say, queen b6, knight a4. After queen to a5, c3, and pawn takes pawn, white cannot recapture due to the pin, and so white usually plays this move b4, attacking the queen and shutting down the diagonal, and then recapturing. Now, the reason that I mention this is that in the game, we will see something very similar where white plays a b4 pawn thrust. All right, so back to the game. We got knight c2, knight c6, knight f3, or sorry, c3 here, and now we get the move a5. Of course, not knight f3, by the way, because after c3 here, you build the classic connect 4 with the pawns in the center of the board. Now, one fun fact is I was doing a live stream on my Kick channel of this game, and this actually reminded me of a time long ago, nearly a quarter of a century ago, when I actually played this with the white piece in a critical last round game in the World Youth Chess Championship in the under 14 section in the year 2000 at the turn of the millennium. I played this setup with white against Daniel Stellwagen from the Netherlands. I would win a last round game to get the silver medal in that event, but I actually started playing the system back then because a famous player, a certain 5-time world chess champion by the name of Vishy Anand, started playing the setup with white. He won some games against players like Alexei Shirov in the FIDE World Championship at the time, and so I actually picked this up from Vishy. So it should come as no surprise that nearly a quarter of a century later, you have Gukesh, one of the rising Indian juniors, trying to emulate the great Indian hero Vishy. So after c3, Ding Liren spends over 30 minutes, I should say, or maybe just under 30 minutes to play this move a5 here. Now, at this point, everybody was starting to become really worried for Ding because it is the start of the game. You never know what's going to happen, and it feels as though he should not be out of his preparation. Now, the reason that it's so shocking for Ding to spend 30 minutes is that in this opening, the French, even if you only start your preparation a few weeks before the event, this position e5 and bishop g5 are pretty much the only two main moves. After knight d7, white really only has two setups. Either to go f4, c5, and knight f3, or to play like in the game with knight e2, c5, c3, knight c6, and f4 with the transposition. So when we get this position after c3 and Ding starts thinking for 30 minutes, everyone begins to panic and think, well, what's going on with Ding? He's spending 30 minutes here. Surely he can't be out of his preparation because he's had many months to prepare for the match. So everyone's worried, but Ding ends up playing this move a5 here. Now, the idea behind a5, as we'll see, is after knight f3, you go a4 here, taking a little bit of space on the edge, because currently with this classic connect 4, white has much more space in the center of the board. So with black, you want to start taking some space on the queen side. So after a4, we get the move bishop to e3. Ding plays bishop to e7. We get the move g4, and now we have queen a5. Now at this point, Gukesh is still in his preparation. He has not even used 2 full minutes, showing how well he has used his time to get ready for the match. But queen a5 is the first move that comes as a surprise to Gukesh. I suspect that at this point he had looked at a couple of moves like castles, for example, maybe b5, maybe f6, but he had not looked at the move queen a5. Now this is what makes chess very difficult, because when I was doing my live stream, I actually checked with my supercomputer in this position to see whether g4 was okay. Now initially when g4 is played, you'll notice that the weaker chess.com engine says it's a bad move, but when you use a stronger engine, g4 turns out to be completely fine for white, pretty much close to 0.00, which is equal. But g4, according to my strong engine, was the 7th choice in this position. There were 6 other moves that it considered to be about the same or very slightly better, and this is one of the cat and mouse games that go on at the top level of chess. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that everybody has access to the same computer programs, same technology, and generally you're looking at the absolute best moves for each side. So when you're looking at the absolute best moves for each side, generally what happens is you look at the top 2 or 3 moves, and g4 is the 7th move. So are you going to really look at 7 moves in this position? Not likely. On the other hand, here in this position, queen a5, which is played by Ding, is a completely fine move, but it is the 4th suggestion, I believe, of Stockfish and or Torch, whereas Torch prefers moves like castles or f6 or b5 over queen a5, but queen a5 is completely fine. Unfortunately for Ding, not only is this okay, but this is where it takes Gukesh out of his preparation, and Gukesh is no longer able to move instantly. So we got the move bishop g2 here, played after a 20-minute think. Up to this point, you can see Gukesh still has a very comfortable 27-minute time advantage. So we get a3 from Ding, b3 played, and now we get the move pawn takes pawn. Here Gukesh plays the move b4, which is why I mentioned that earlier French line where white goes b4, because now the pawns guard each other and you attack the queen. You could of course take the pawn on d4 here, but one of the big drawbacks is there's bishop to h4, checking the king, revealing the exposure since you push the pawn too far to g4. And if you take with a bishop here, I can just take, and after takes and something like b6 followed by bishop a6, black should be okay. So we get b4 here, attacking the queen. Ding plays queen c7, and now we get knight e takes d4. Here Ding plays knight b6 after a 20-minute think, and I still felt that at this point in the game, if Ding were to play knight b6 or castles very, very quickly, he would start to be able to potentially turn this game in his favor, perhaps, but he spends 20 minutes on knight b6, and I still was not feeling very good. Again, we're on move number 14. Ding is down 1 hour on the clock, but much more importantly, remember that in this World Championship match, the players are playing with 2 hours to make 40 moves, but there is 0 increment until move 40. So that means if you get low on time, there is great potential for there to be a classic clown fiesta where there are a lot of blunders, people might even get flagged, and it's like playing chess online. So we get castles here from Gukesh, and the computer actually wants to move knight b5 here to attack the queen, and after queen d8 guarding the knight, it likes this awkward move bishop f1, stopping knight to c4 potentially. This is something that I think that at the human level is just too difficult to play because it violates all the basic principles. When you go bishop f1, you're underdeveloping on purpose, moving the bishop backwards. Now you can no longer castle your king, and it's simply one of those backwards bishop moves that looks quite interesting, at least according to Kramnik. So in this position, we get castles instead, and now Ding plays knight c4. We get bishop to f2, and now we have bishop to d7 being played, and here Gukesh plays queen e2. Now this is probably the critical moment in the game, because after knight takes d4, you'll notice that Gukesh has been steadily burning time. The time advantage is decreasing, and this is where I feel like he really loses complete control of the game. Now up to this point, you'll notice that Ding is still using time, moving pretty normally. You feel like he's probably gonna get low on time, but after this move knight takes d4 is played, the game shifts completely, and Ding will now go on to play like an absolute genius for the rest of the game. Spoiler alert. So if Gukesh were to take with a bishop, which is what the computer wants here, the bishop guards the pawns here. Now after h5, for example, white can play g5, g6, and something like rook f to c1, followed by bishop f1, and white is still okay, but black should be fine. Instead, we get knight d4, which actually looks very logical because of the idea knight b5, and here Ding goes beast mode. We get knight b2 being played after 1 minute, less than 1 minute being used here, and this is a move that is phenomenal. And I was actually shocked to see this move being played as quickly as it was. I felt like Ding would probably find the move, but he would need to use 5, maybe 10 minutes, in which case he'd get fairly low on the clock and bad things could happen. But he plays it right away. It's the best move in the position. Now we get to move queen to e3 from Gukesh, trying to guard the pawn, and Ding plays rook c8 immediately. Now, the important thing here is that Ding is starting to move really quickly here. He's finding the best moves, and if he can find like 4 to 5 quick moves, it means that he'll most likely be able to avoid bad time pressure because he'll have plenty of time to think. So we get rook ac1 here. Now Ding plays queen c4, another move that he plays very quickly, simply a nice move, attacking the pawn on a2, and there's also the idea of queen d3 as well. Now here Gukesh plays this move f5 after a 4-minute think. I suspect that at this point Gukesh is starting to get a little bit frustrated because with all the talk before the match about how Ding has been playing horribly, Gukesh is a massive favorite. When you combine that with the fact that Ding was down 1 hour on the clock, Gukesh coming with a big opening surprise, it's hard not to let the psychology get to you. And as someone who has played at the highest levels of chess, not a match of course, but having played the candidates and playing against Magnus many times, when you're able to come out blitzing your preparation, you're up an hour on the clock early, it's very hard for your mind not to wander, to start thinking about the what ifs of winning the game. And especially for Gukesh, who's never played a match of this importance before, he probably was feeling really good, getting really hyped up, probably thinking, okay, I'm off to the start. Ding is playing like the Ding that we know he's been for the last 18 months, and only good things can happen. But of course, Ding has now played the last 3 to 4 moves very quickly. He's played all the best moves, and he continues to play the best moves. He plays queen to d3 here, trying to trade the queens. Now, the reason this move is so good is that in this position, if white can get something like f6 here potentially and takes, and queen h6 maybe, or bishop h4, there's great potential to attack the black king on this open g file here, and it's very hard to play. Now, I know bishop h4 itself is bad, but queen to h6 takes, and then I think bishop h4, and the position is getting very, very murky with the weak black king. So after f5, queen d3 is played, if black is able to trade the queens here, for example, with this trade, now all the juicers are weak. The pawn on e5 and the rook are under attack. c3 is weak. b4 is potentially weak, even if you get some version, like just to illustrate something like this, for example, with knight c4 and bishop d4. Even this is really good for black because you have the bash in here with the knight on c4. You have a connect 4 as well, and all roads lead to Rome. So after queen d3, Gukesh plays queen to e1 here. Now, queen to f4 is probably one of the moves that Gukesh considered. I have not listened to the post-game interview because I'm obviously doing this recap as quickly as possible, but I suspect he might have missed that after queen f4. Black is a nasty move, g5, attacking the queen here. If you move the queen to any of these squares, I will simply trade the queen here, and after takes, and bishop d8, bishop b6, there are all kinds of weaknesses on the white queen side here, and it's getting very hard to play. However, the glitch move does exist in this position, a move that has only existed for the last 250 years or so, which is of course en passant with pawn takes pawn. But after takes and queen takes g6, now the queen guards the pawns against threats on f7, but you also are threatening to fork with knight d3, hitting the queen and the rook and winning the game. And if white plays a move like queen f3, now you can play h5 here, opening the h and the g files here to harass the white king on g1. You still have knight d3 to fork the bishop and the rook, and everything is starting to become really, really bad for white. Therefore, Gukesh plays the move queen to e1, and now Ding plays bishop g5, activating the dark square b. Really nice move because currently the bishop is very, very passive on this diagonal. But after bishop g5, now you're attacking the rook, and after rook to c2, we get the move rook c4 played instantly as well. Great decision by Ding to play rook c4 here. Now there were other moves. Castles, for example, would have been good here, because if white goes f6, now you have bishop to a4, and the rook is very, very weak on c2, but he goes for rook c4 instead. Now perhaps Ding is trying to play for all the memes. Obviously many people follow the content creators like myself and Levy, and probably Ding was saying, well, white can play a move like h3, and I'll go for sacking the rook with rook takes knight, and after takes black has this extra horse on b2. You're up a piece, and you're going to get a massive win in the first game of the match. So after rook c4, Gukesh plays h4, and now Ding goes bishop f4 here, attacking the juicer on e5 and keeping the rook sack alive with rook takes d4. Gukesh plays queen b1 here. Now what's amazing about this is if we look at this position and we think back to just a couple of moves ago, which I think was move number 21. Of course, my scroll wheel doesn't work on this mouse, so I can't do it. If we go back a couple of moves, back to where knight b2 was played, Ding was down like 25 to 30 minutes. Now not only has he turned the position around, but he's also up 15 minutes on the clock, and at this point, as you can tell from the valuation bar, Ding is looking very good. It's looking like he is finally Ding chilling, and he is going to win the game. So after queen b1, we get rook takes pawn here. Important move, by the way, because if you castle, for example, white can sack the rook with rook takes knight. If you take the rook, you do a Botez gambit and resign the game. And if you trade the queens, white takes with the rook, and now white is the one with the extra pony on d4. So we get rook c3. Now Gukesh trades the rooks. If Gukesh were to sack the rook after takes, now the rook guards the queen from being captured. So we get takes, and now we get pawn takes pawn. And here Ding makes a mistake with pawn takes pawn. Now this move does not lose the game or anything, but it's definitely not the best move. The way that you would have expected this to happen is the other order with knight e2, takes, and fe6. And again, black would have the choice between taking with the pawn or the bishop. So back to this position with fe6 here. What Ding should have played was bishop takes, and we get this position via transposition here, where after takes and bishop c5, you take the pawn on g4, and now you can play f6 potentially. Let's say white goes queen c2, you go f6, king f7, run the king to safety. Or for example, say white plays like queen to e1 here, there's knight d3, forking the queen and the bishop. You also have the idea to even run the king to d7 and c8 to manually castle the king to the queen side. So everything's looking great if this were to happen, but instead Ding takes with the pawn. Now here Gukesh plays knight e2, we get takes, and this is where Gukesh makes a big mistake with the move queen c2. Now Gukesh uses 6 minutes on this move. This is a moment where with 10.5 minutes on move 29, if he's going to spend a lot of time, he better come up with the goods, and he is unable to do that. Now the reason that white is actually not doing horribly here is you can play bishop c5, and after queen takes pawn, white has a nice move here, which is rook to f3 followed by queen to f1 and rook a3, after which white is doing relatively okay here due to weakened black king. But probably the line that Gukesh saw was this very beautiful-esque line with queen takes pawn, sacking the queen, doing a Botez gambit, and you're hoping that black will take the queen, because then you have rook to f8 checkmate. But after queen takes h7, black can do a resack of the Botez gambit, checking the king, and after takes, there's no longer a mate on f8, and with the extra pawns in the endgame, black should win. And if white plays king to h2, for example, you can take the pawn, trade the queens, go back to h8, and now when we do the count, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3 extra pawns in the endgame for Ding, and again, he is Ding chilling. So after queen takes f4, Gukesh plays queen c2, and now we get queen to c4, and at this point, after Ding offers a trade of the queens, he is on his way to victory, because after queen d2, he correctly castles the king out of the center on move number 31 here, and he has finally finished his development. Now, this is also what makes chess so fascinating and mysterious, which is that Ding has violated the rules of chess. You've probably seen a million videos that I've done, and I say, well, finish your development, castle the king early. Now, of course, you want to do that, but every situation in chess is different. And in this case, Ding is able to violate or understand when you can break the rule. And even though it's move 31, he finally gets castled, and now he has finished his development. He's up a couple of juicers here, and barring a miracle from Gukesh, he will win the game. So we get bishop to d4. Ding plays knight to d3, a great move here. Queen guards the knight, but on top of that, your knight is jumping back towards the center of the board here. You're attacking the bishop and the pawn, and at this point, unless white can create some mate threats towards the king on g7, literally like pronto, he is going to lose the game. So Gukesh plays queen to e3. He spends 3 minutes here, down to 45 seconds, still 7 moves to go, and unless we get a catastrophe from Ding, he is going to win his first game against a top 10 player in a very, very long time. So we get rook takes, and now Ding plays e5 here, creating the big black center, pushing the pawns forward. But most importantly, even though white has the pin, he's going to win a pawn on g4 here, or the bishop on d4, and material will play. So we get takes. Now we get bishop g2, blocking the check of the king, and here Ding plays move bishop f5. Now this is the final move of this masterpiece that Ding has played. He goes bishop to f5 here, and he's going to go bishop e4 and blunt the power of the wooden shield on g2, and at this point it is all over for Gukesh. Gukesh plays bishop g3. We get bishop to e4. Important move here that you don't play something like knight takes b4, because after knight b4 there's queen to e8, and we get the classic ice skater checkmate. King has no squares available. So we get bishop to e4, slamming the door shut on the e file here, also creating your own wooden shield and blunting the power of the light square b. And Gukesh plays king h2, and now we get to move h6. Again, not bishop takes bishop because of the aforementioned checkmate. So after king h2, we get h6 being played, and now Gukesh plays bishop h3 with 4 seconds on the clock. This is, of course, move number 39. So Gukesh he's got no time. He just has to move, so he plays this, and now we get queen to d1 here, threatening to go for the classic double A battery checkmate with queen to h1, where the bishop and the queen yo-yo to checkmate the king. So after queen d1, Gukesh plays bishop to d6 here, creating the square for the king in the case of the check, and now Ding plays queen c2. Gukesh goes king g3, and here Ding plays queen takes a2. Now at this point, after queen c2, the players have made time control. They've made move 40. Both players get an additional 30 minutes on the clock, and even though Gukesh has made it to move 41, there is no way back. So after king g3, we get queen takes a2, and here Gukesh plays bishop e6. He is down 3 pawns in this position here, 1 2 3 4 5. On top of that, you've got the great wooden shield in the middle guarding the bastion. You've got the threat of the mate here. With all these pieces perfectly placed, combined with the passed a pawn where you can even start pushing the p, it is all over. All hope is lost for Gukesh. So Gukesh plays bishop e6, one last move, the classic spite check, and here Ding very calmly plays move king to h8, and at this point Gukesh resigns the game, and Ding Liren gets an epic win in the first game of the match. Now it's important to note, not king to h7. This would be the final moment where you could let the win slip, because after king h7, white can sack the queen, and after takes, now white has 2 b's versus a knight. Black is still okay here, probably better in fact, but the game goes on. But after king to h8, Gukesh resigns here because if he plays queen takes e4, trying to go for the same idea, it's no longer a check, so now I can move the queen and check your king. King moves to h3, I take the queen and I win the game. And if you play bishop h3, trying to stop the checkmate on g2, for example, I can simply go queen to b2, followed by a2, a1. I promote the pawn, push that p, get a second queen, and it's all over. So after king h8, Gukesh resigns, and we have a huge shocker in the first game of this match with Ding Liren winning, and not only winning, but winning with the black pieces. And frankly, I have nothing to say really other than I'm speechless, and to tip my cap to Ding, because frankly, like most of the other pundits, I really did not see Ding coming out firing like this and winning the first game. But on top of that, it's a game where he shows great class. It felt to me that after move 7, move 11, maybe even move 15, he was down an hour on the clock. His body language was not great. It looked like he was on his way to losing, much like he has over the last 18 months. But once he started moving quickly, he finds knight b2, rook c8, queen c4, queen d3, and playing all these moves very quickly and confidently. It felt to me that something just shifted in his mind, where when he wasn't spending the time thinking and he just started moving on intuition, he was able to sort of forget what had happened and just like go with the flow and find some awesome moves and show why he is such a strong player historically. So amazing result for Ding. I mean, really doesn't get better. Wins with black, outplays his opponent when he gets out prepared, and it felt like he was in trouble in the opening. Just an all-around epic victory on all fronts, psychologically, of course, the actual score itself, and it bodes very, very well for Ding. Now for Gukesh, it is only the first game of the match. There's a long way to go, but I think that he has to be reeling after this loss, because really with what everybody is saying, including myself, I think that everybody was making it sound like it was going to be a complete cakewalk for him. He was just going to coast to victory, no issues whatsoever, and become the world champion without a fight. But he's going to have to show his mettle after losing this first round game, much like he did in the candidates when he lost a shocker to Ali Reza, and I would say somewhere in the early to mid part of the tournament there. So he's going to have to rebound in this match as well, try to find his groove. The match has a long way to go, but this is definitely the start that nobody saw coming, including myself. But it's going to make for a very exciting match, as I do think we're going to see a lot of fireworks. Gukesh is going to start trying to take more chances, maybe even as early as game 2 when he plays with the black pieces. So great start to this match. Really hype and exciting first game. It's been a while since we've had a decisive first game in a match, in a world championship match, probably at least like 20 years. But that's what we get. So really exciting start. Going to be exciting to follow. But at any rate, that's going to do it for today. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the first game of the 2024 World Chess Championship being played in Singapore. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below. And we'll be back with a recap after Ding and Gukesh face off in game number 2 tomorrow. Hope you guys enjoyed the recap, and I'll see you all very soon. Have a good one. Bye.